in ensuring better results for their children? What is the difference in the fee structure of private schools versus public schools? What time is it? It's question time. Welcome to the show. My name is Motshekga. The Matric results released last night have yet again highlighted the performance disparities between public and private schools. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga announced that the national matric pass rate for the year 2014 is 75.8%. This is a drop of 2.4 percentage points from the 78.2 in 2013. Last week, the Independent Examinations Board, IEB, released its matric pass rate of 98.38%, a slight drop from 2013's 98.56%. My guests in studio today, Tate Mahlomolakekana, the chairman of the National Association of Parents in School Governance, and Mr. Alistair Dry. He is the executive headmaster at the Bishop Bevan School. Gentlemen, welcome to the program, and I really appreciate you making time. Mr. Dry, let me start with you. How did Bishop Bevan perform?
Mr. Tsedu, we were very pleased with our results. We had a 97% pass rate and a 90% university entrance rate. So we were delighted with the performance of our learners.
97% pass rate?
Correct.
And 90%?
University entrance, a bachelor's pass.
What's the X factor here?
I don't know that there is one. I think it's a combination, but committed learners, very committed teachers, and very supportive parents, and all put together in an environment where people want to learn and want to teach.
Okay. Mr. Kekana, you have a school, for instance, like Bishop Bevan, which has produced 97% pass rate. Overall, the minister has announced, 75.8? What are you as parents, what are your views? What is your feeling? Perhaps let's start there. What was your reaction to the results?
Well, firstly, our reaction will be congratulations.
Thank you.
To your school on this pass rate. And wish you the best of luck for the year ahead.
Thank you.
And congratulations to all the kids in the country who has done well. Tough luck to those who didn't make it. It's not the end, it's a beginning. They haven't done something, they have to begin to do something. I must say that, yes, when you look at the school such as Bishop Bevan producing 97 pass rate. We want to be saying in all public schools in the country, we should have been celebrating a 97% pass rate in the country. We are celebrating 75% though. You know, it's not a decimal performance.
Okay.
Looking at the introduction of CAPS during the 2014 academic year, it was rolled out to the matriculants. And looking at inadequate resources, and resourcing. Look, unfortunately, we still have the haves and the have-nots. And then if you look at the imbalances, they were not created by us. For you and I were not there in 1948. When Prime Minister then, Hendrik Verwoerd, and them, and in 1953, when they introduced Bantu education, we're still suffering from that inheritance, the legacy of apartheid education in public schools. Hence, you can have this drop.
Yes.
We're still suffering from the legacy of the introduction of Bantu education.
No, but Mr. Kikan, is the curriculum not the same?
No, the curriculum is the same. I'm talking here about the inadequate resourcing.
How so? I mean, Mr. Dry here can get Tsepo Mashinini 4 Bs. He can get Luyanda Mtweni 4 Bs.
Yes.
Why can't Naledi High produced Tepiso Mashinini with 4 Bs and Luyanda Mtweni with 4 Bs as well.
And like I said earlier on, Mr. Tsedu, well done to those that have done well. But those from the likes of Naledi High and some rural school in Ofimvamba, in the Eastern Cape, a school in Zebediela, in Limpopo, it's not the same environment. The teachers there, I must say, you know, under the circumstances, with in no laboratories, with no libraries, with no enough adequate learning and support, learning and teaching support materials. I must say that we want to achieve that, and we want to reach a state where we can sit confidently. Look, we without adequate resources, you will not be able, you know, to achieve what we want to achieve. But against the background, we can do better.
All right, just hold it there. What is Bishop Bevan doing which is not being done in, you know, mainstream educational institutions?
A difficult question in many ways, because I think it's a number of subtle things. Without any doubt, we are a far better resourced school than many of the others. But I don't know that resources are all that matter. I mean, I see fantastic results coming out of rural schools where children are almost going to school under a tree. So it's not just resources. Teachers, without doubt, play a massive role. They really do. And teachers who are committed, who are there not because it's a high-paying job, not because it's the only job they can get, but they're there because they want to be there. They care about the children. And that qualitative input is significant. And I think what attracts a lot of those teachers to independent schools are smaller class sizes.
Yes.
In many instances, and I gather this from staff who've worked in state schools, a far reduced administrative load. So teachers are freer to get on with teaching and interacting with children. I think there's a real care that comes in. They're concerned about the whole child, and then the parent involvement. Parents who are often sacrificing considerably to send their children to some of the schools. Some of them are very expensive schools.
Yes.
But the parents are then buying into it. They're not just sort of going through the motions. They're heavily invested in their children getting a good education. So their support at home, their support for the policies of the school's approach to discipline, all those sort of things. So you're working as a partnership.
Yes.
And I think all of those things combined are what education needs to be successful.
Are you, as parents, and I mean, I want to really, you know, be blatant here, you know, as black parents in the majority, are you taking some of these things into consideration, that indeed the involvement of parents, you're a parent's body, the involvement of parents in their children's education is as key as it is supposed to be, and as how other institutions have taken them?
Look, Mr. Tsedu, there's nothing that is going to substitute parental involvement in the upbringing of a young one. The success of Gauteng is as a result of a strong parental involvement. If you have seen the results of Gauteng in the last 3 years, Gauteng has implemented under the former MEC of Education, Ms. Barbara Chris, when she was running education in Gauteng, and Mr. Lesufi, the new MEC, continued where the previous MEC continued in terms of investing on advocacy for parental involvement, you know, taking parents through. In Gauteng now, as we speak, we have parents who are so much involved in the education of their children. And
okay, hold that thought there. We'll talk about that further only after the break. We're taking a quick break. Please don't go away.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today is Motshekga, the chairman of the National Association of Parents in School Governance, and of course, Mr. Alistair Dry. He's the executive headmaster at Bishop Bevan School. Welcome back. Let's talk about the CAPS. Mr. Dry, let me start with you. This CAPS system, which everybody has been trying to explain that, because of CAPS, things couldn't just be done the way they were done in the past. Were you not using CAPS?
CAPS has really been introduced for the first time for Matrics this year. It replaces the old outcomes-based education.
Okay.
And my understanding of it is that the syllabus has not changed. It's simply the way we are choosing to teach and assess that has changed. And essentially, the fundamental shift, I think, is a shift away from content towards process and higher order thinking. So learners are encouraged to be more analytical, to be able to interpret things rather than simply regurgitate. So there's an imparting of skills in the process.
Okay.
Having said that, and I've noticed that the Minister of Basic Education commented that this was partly responsible for the drop in the pass rate. We, as an independent school, experienced similar difficulties. Even grade 10s and so on. Suddenly, in English as home language, for example, in mathematics, where the CAPS came in, there was a greater requirement of the learners, an adjustment from both the teachers and the learners in how material was being taught and being assessed. So I think we've all been through it, but again, not being an educational expert myself, my understanding is it's a far more rigorous and a far better way of teaching and assessing than we had in the past. So I think it's a good move forward from a quality of education point of view for our country, the whole CAPS system.
But are you also subjected to it, or do you use a different one?
No, we are. Really, the only difference between ourselves and the state schools is that we've chosen to be examined by the Independent Examination Board, the IEB, but not all independent schools do. Many of them write the state exams. It's simply a different examining body, but on the same curriculum, we're subject to CAPS as well. So,
why didn't you drop?
Drop in terms of our pass rate?
Yeah.
We did. We had 100% pass rate last year.
So you...
But I do think, though, that it's teachers having the resources, teachers investing in their own development, making sure that we're able to deal with this, to deal with the type of questions. As I said, particularly in subjects like English as a home language, it was a difficult process. The staff struggled, the learners struggled, as they came to understand that this was a much more difficult way of being examined. More was required of both learners and teachers. But the commitment was to get it done, and the resources...
Did you attribute the 3% drop to CAPS?
No, I wouldn't do that. We're also a small school, so in fact percentages they can be exaggerated. But I'd hesitate to put a number on the impact. One would need to ask the IAB if they attributed... Theirs was a marginal decline in, I think, a matter of decimal points between 2013 and 2014. I'm not sure.
Mr. Kekana, what is your take on this CAPS system?
Well, we, since 1994, various programs have been introduced in schools, various methodologies of teaching systems. Remember when, like I said, even when I started, what we inherited.
Yes.
And from time to time, we a dynamic country, a country that wants to grow. Education sector contributes to the socio-economic development of a country. And I think from a point of view of continuous changes in how we approach curriculum delivery, the recent program that has been introduced and named CAP, it's coming, and for an example, you're asking Alistair now in terms of why they didn't drop, and said no, it's not because of this. But if you look at it, I mean, they've dropped 2%. Public schools have also dropped 2%. It tells a story, in my opinion. But I think it's a progressive way of delivering quality public education to our kids, and I think our kids are responding well with time. And I think because it's for the first time in 2014 that it was introduced to grade 12s.
Yes,
we're looking forward to a better product in 2015.
So, I mean, one of the things where I think this year's or last year's grade 12s did struggle, there were no previous exam papers, for example, for them to practice with.
Yes.
And often those things, I think,
maybe
are
that's
more
the
telling.
reason why
I think it's one of the things, but maybe so. But I do think that makes it a lot more difficult, and I agree with Mr. Kakana. With time, we as a country will get better with this, I have no doubt.
Just talk to me about the 30% story that went on and on and on, Mr. Kakana. The pass mark. It was said it's 30% in the subject or 30% in the other. Or rather, let me start with the educator himself. What was happening there?
I'm not sure, and I also find it rather alarming that you need 30% to pass the subject. I mean, I think when I was at school, we probably needed at least 50 in the subject. That you get 1 out of every 2 questions right. Here, you need 1 out of 3 right, and yet you're being told you master a subject if you can get 30%. So,
what's your pass mark?
We're the same. We're the same. So 30% in subjects like mathematics and physical science. Home language needs to be 40. But it is concerning. It's really concerning. What we tend to do is lower down in the school. We raise those levels to try and raise the bar. But at the end of the day, the IEB sets the pass marks and so on. I think it's a worry for us as a country that those are pass marks. And having said that, with both some of our learners, and I'm sure some of the learners who got their matric results today, having been given a university entrance, a bachelor's pass, I'm not sure that they're really suited and qualified to go to university, given that level of mastery. And I think the universities are probably quite worried. Hence, they're beginning to introduce their own
bridging
and entrance tests, the national benchmark test and those sort of things.
Were you happy with that?
Well, firstly, I must indicate that I'm not an academic.
You are a parent.
I'm a parent.
Yeah, we understand.
And the academics will give their own analogy and interpretation of this. When I was a learner myself at the secondary school, it was 40%.
Okay.
To pass. But you'll of course agree that these systems are being gradually introduced.
Yeah.
And as a country that comes from a set historic past, we will eventually reach a point where we can say this is the best benchmark that we want to
Mr.
put.
In almost all the questions that I've asked you, you found a way to refer to apartheid.
No, Mr. Tsedu, I'm not deliberately finding a way. It's a reality. That's where we come from. It's not a proud history, but if you go to, let's talk about, for an example, resourcing of schools.
We'll talk about resourcing of schools only after the break.
Okay.
This is Question Time.
I realized life is short. I want to live my dream.
They can burn my face, but not my voice.
I'm definitely not a cross-dresser. South Africa, I'm just a gay man.
Join Puleng Molebatsi on Bupilong every Saturday at 17:30 CAT.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today, Mr. Motshekga, is the chairman of the National Association of Parents in School Governance. And Mr. Alistair Dry is the executive headmaster at Bishop Bevan School, which got 97% pass rate in this year's Matric. Now, Mr. Khan, you were still trying to explain to me the resourcing of schools as far as the 30% is concerned.
No, I'm not linking the 30% and the resourcing of schools.
Okay.
It's what people who benchmark have said.
Okay.
I mean, parents have not convened a meeting and said we want our kids to be benchmarked at 30%. The examiner, subject advisors, those who put together curriculum have said around the table, and surely they can answer better what model they put in around coming with the issue of 30%. All I was accounting for was, we come from a process where we're introducing a new system in education and integrating. Other schooling community have historically had better edge. I mean, if you look at where most of the public comes from the former TET and the former TED, Transvaal Education Department, they didn't come from the same system of education. We had the House of Delegates, House of Representatives. Remember, before 1994, Mr. Tsedu, we had 19 departments of education in the country, and to forge that into one, yes, it's 20 years enough. That's another question, but we get in there, and our kids, I mean, if you look at the kids that have done well in 2014, are kids from no-fee schools. These are kids from schools that were said to be underperforming schools. The top 10 in the country comes from Gauteng schools, all the 8 learners in the top 10 in the country. And they're coming from Ponelopili, a school in Ivory, a school in Orange Farm. They've done well, and they've competed with the rest of the country. So I think at the end of the day, is we continue to make a cordial call, to authorities, to the government, and to the department, to look at financing historically disadvantaged schools differently.
Okay. I think that then brings me to Bishop Bevan. It's a paying school, and by paying, I'm not talking about, meager payments, quite a substantial amount. Do you find any justification for the amount that parents have to pay for for their children to be at Bishop Bevan?
I think it's fully justified. I think it's worth pointing out that just about all independent schools are non-profit. So it's not as though we've got shareholders who are taking a dividend out. So all the resources do get ploughed into the school. I can only speak for our school, but
Sure.
Nearly 75% of our expenses are on staff salaries, teacher salaries, and so on. So that is where the money is going. And also the other factor, I think, is small classes. So we don't have classes of 40 or thereabouts. Our biggest class is 25 children, but certainly in the college, at some of the senior grades, you've got classes of 8 or 10 per class. So learning is happening in a far more intimate environment, but it's expensive to do that. And then there are the resources. I mean, we're very fortunate. Our buildings are old, and well established, but they do require maintenance. We have tennis courts and basketball courts and a swimming pool and so on. So all those sort of resources they're wonderful to have, but they also then require upkeep, maintenance, and so on. But I think without any shadow of doubt that the quality of education that is produced and the fact that parents willingly pay that money is an indication that there is value for money. And I think that's our job as heads of schools, is to ensure, if we are charging the sort of fees that we do, that we deliver value for money.
How do you feel about that? Like you were saying, yes, it's good that some non-paying schools have produced, top results. But generally, I don't think that is the case.
Well, if you look at some of the fees, these schools are combined income of a couple in Soweto. You must bring in some relatives to add up into that combined income. Some of the people, they getting 75,000 rand annual income. And if you look at some of the fees there, I mean, it's a combined income of a husband and a wife together with the uncle and the aunt. They must put it together to pay a school fees. You know, but against that backdrop, you know, kids in public schools in poor communities have really done well. And where I think as a country, we need to take a different posture. And a posture that says if people chooses to go to an independent school, means they can afford.
Sure.
Let's not subsidize them. You know, let's take the subsidy into poor schools.
But are you subsidized?
You know, not all of them.
Oh, okay.
The low fee schools are.
But there's lots of independent schools, you know, that are subsidized by government. And they're not giving us a good deal, such as this one is not subsidized, but it's giving us good results. Can I give you an example of Gauteng?
Yes.
In Gauteng, of the 32 schools that are subsidized, 16 of them this morning, when the MEC was presenting the analysis, 16 of them have performed below 40%. And these are schools that are subsidized. These are independent schools. There's no monitoring and evaluation. They are self-controlled. With a public school, there's a government control. The Schools Act controls. There's laws that are saying this is how you do things. But with an independent school, they paying exorbitant amount. They hiring underqualified teachers, most of them foreigners. Some of these schools have performed as cheap as 25% when we continue to subsidize them. Let's take the subsidy from independent schools and pump it into public schools and continue to improve quality public education.
Okay. Perhaps as we wrap up, the question of uniform, Mr. Dry, why is only one person allowed to sell your school uniform?
It's an interesting thing, and part of it is, I think, about economies of scale. So for any manufacturer to produce, let's say, a school blazer or a school tie, to do it, they need to produce a certain quantity. If you now then spread that over several suppliers, it just makes it uneconomical for them to do it. Having said that, though, I think there is a problem from a competition's point of view, that, in fact, one can only buy from a supplier. We work very hard with our particular supplier to make sure that the prices are not exorbitant. And I guess there's always the threat, albeit a difficult one, that you would move to a different supplier.
Okay. What's your expectations this year, 2015 Matric?
We have a particularly strong group of grade 12s this year. If I look at how they performed at their end-of-year grade 11 exams, I think we will do as well. I think we will, in all probability, get probably double the number of distinctions that we did this year. So we're expecting a very good year. Having said that, they come and go. You know, the year after may not be as strong, but we continue to build. And
all right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kekana, for the time. That was question time for today. A big thank you to you for watching the show. Get in touch with us. Our email address, questiontime@sabc.co.za. Our Twitter handle @questiontime24. You can also follow me on Twitter, and we can have further discussion on the subject @Mpho-Tsebi. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.
A very good evening to you and welcome to Business Review. Oil prices still haven't reached their bottom. That means a record plunge in the petrol price tonight. Following the release of Matric results, we'll also be looking at the disconnect between education and the skills required by business. We start with a look at the day's top news stories.
I was expecting the worst and I passed with a bachelor degree, sir. And I'm so excited.
Some tears of sadness, some tears of joy as the class of 2014 receives their results.
Ashimamla has taken his team to yet another test victory.
The Proteas secure their status as the #1 test team in the world of cricket. It's a petrol price party and it's set to continue. The price of fuel will fall by a record amount at midnight. At the same time, oil prices fell to their lowest level in around 5.5 years today, which bodes well for another possible decrease in February. Brent crude oil, which South Africa imports for fuel, is trading close to $51 a barrel. Now that level was last seen in May 2009. The cartel of oil-producing countries, OPEC, has lost its ability to limit supply, and there is a current glut due to oil operations in America and other parts of the world. Of course, the darker side is that the lower oil price also points to a lack of demand due to slow growth rates across the globe. Uncertainty around the stability and economic prospects of the Eurozone are weighing on the price at the moment. A snap election in Greece this month could lead to the country leaving the Eurozone. The same factors are causing investors to shun emerging market currencies like our own, the rand, which is seen as relatively riskier. So the weaker rand will mean that falls in the petrol price in future are unlikely to be as sharp as the one we will see tonight. So something to rev up the new year. At midnight, the price at the pumps will drop by a whopping R1.27 per litre. Petrol will decrease